Hi guys, this is Sam and welcome back. In this video we will be looking at what does it actually mean when people say in the flow with regards to HTML and CSS, and then how to use absolute positioning on some elements. The reason for this video is that you will hear the term in the flow quite often, and also absolute positioning is a very quick and simple way to help build a website very quickly. It's not the best when we talk about responsive design, but if you are perhaps a GCSE level student, this might be one of the best ways to build your website up early, and then perhaps look at moving towards a more responsive solution later on. With that being said, let's get on with it. So we've already got our Visual Studio Code already open, and we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this in the flow.html, and we get a blank page, and we're going to be using Emmet to help build the page quickly. So we're just going to type in HTML, drop down to number 5, so that we can get the basic HTML5 template. Okay. And then we're going to drop down into the body section. So when you hear the term in the flow in HTML, what it basically means is where does that element exist naturally. So before any HTML or CSS has really been applied to it regarding its position, where would it actually apply in the page? So the first thing we need to do is actually create some elements that we can see, so they'll be in the flow. We're going to use some basic div elements like we've done before, and again we're just going to use the standard B1, B2, B3 classes, simply because they don't really mean anything in this particular thing. It's just so that we can see them. So again we'll use Emmet for this, so we will use .b $, and we'll do 6, so times 6. Just move out the way so we can see that, and that should give us 6 elements with a class of B1 to B6. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and inside them we're just going to put in their names for the moment, or the names of the class. So B1, B2, B3, B4, B5 and B6. Okay, so we save this, and as we've done before, we will right click on it and do the open with live server. Because these are block level elements, they take up their own space, so we're going to give them a little bit more structure. Okay, we're going to give them a background color each, just make it easier to identify them, and we can actually see how much area they are actually taking up as well. So we go back into here, and for that we're going to need to put in an internal style sheet. And like we talked about before, internal style sheets are fine when we're doing things like this, but when we're doing proper pages that we will be doing later on, we should be using external style sheets. So type in the word style, and we'll allow Emmet by pressing enter to actually create the tags for us. And so we're going to go with .b1. Okay, so for class B1, and we're going to give it background color, and we'll choose aqua. And we're going to do the same for B2. In fact, we'll do the same for all of them. So again, background color, and we'll just change, just go round and go blue there, and we'll do the same .p3. And in fact, you can do some copy and pasting to some degree. These all seem to be blue colours. Well, I think I better change that. So we've got a slightly different colour. Let's go for blue violet there. Change that to 6, 5, before, and change the background colors. Green, yellow, and this is the one that begins with M. Oh, quite a few. Let's go with maroon. Okay, so we can save that and we can bring up that web page again, and there we have them. So this is what they look like in the flow. Okay, because these are block level elements, they take up what we class as the entire line. Okay, so you can see they're taking up the entire width of the area it can do. Because it has only got a small amount of height, you know, that's the height it's taken, which is the size of the text. But that is the basic in the flow. Okay, and this is why we've given the background colors, so we can actually see where they are. So in the flow means with no real CSS applied to it, where does it, you know, where does it land? Okay, and by only adding a background color, all we've done is highlighted the space that it takes up, and so that's what we mean by in the flow. So the next stage is to give them a little bit more of a shape. We're going to make them into squares. That has nothing to do with the positioning, it just makes it easier for us to ID them and so they don't take up the entire space. And then we'll use position absolute to move them into specific areas. So because they are all this, we can use a element CSS rule on the div element to format them all easily. So we can use div open brace, and then we're going to do width of, let's just make 150 pixels. Let's get that right, there we go. And also a height of 150 pixels. Okay, and again we can save that and we can view it, and there you go. And again, even though we've changed the width and the height, you can see it no longer requires the entire space. It is still taking up the entire space because div elements are what we call block level elements, and they say I'm taking up the entire line even if I don't require it. So even though we've made them smaller, they don't care. Okay, and we can still see them in nice blocks going down. Okay, and again, the reason why we're giving them numbers is that it makes them easier to identify for what we're going to do next. So when we do position absolute, the first thing we do is have to say we're going to use position absolute because we need to let the browser know how they're going to render it. So when we give it position absolute, we then have to decide where we want it to go. And there are four basic positioning that we can give it: top, bottom, left, right. And you normally use top or bottom, left or right. Okay, and these reflect to where the parent is. Okay, and this is an important term to understand. It's where the parent is. So at the moment, because if we go back to the code, these are all inside the body. Okay, and the body is, as we know, the visible part of the web page. Okay, the position absolute will always be in relation to the browser. Okay, to the visible part of the browser. Well, actually not the visible part, just the browser window itself. And therefore, top refers to how far away from this top edge, left means how far away from this left edge, right from this right edge, and surprise, surprise, bottom from the bottom edge. But remember, the body page itself could actually be going down further. Okay, there isn't this time because there's no scroll bar, but if there's a scroll bar, it'll be wherever that ends. Okay, it's not just where the screen is, it is from the element itself. So what we're going to do is that we're going to move this B1 from over here to over here. Okay, so we're still going to use the top value, so top, and we're going to give it a top of 0, and then we're going to give a right of 0. So it'd be how far away from this right hand edge of the page does this right hand edge get positioned. Likewise, how far away from the top edge of the body does this top edge of B1 go. So we're going to give them both 0. Okay, so position absolute, and then we're going to say top 0 pixels and right 0 pixels. And when we save that and we view it, we can see it's gone right to top. So you notice on these ones, we've actually got some default margin values, which is why they're taken slightly off. But because we put this at exactly 0, 0, it is in the top right hand corner. There is no space at all between the edge of the browser, okay, and that element. And then what we're seeing is that the natural flow, when we do position absolute, we took this B1 out of the natural flow, and it meant that these all moved up to the next available spot, okay? And this is why they're there. And it doesn't matter which one we move to do this, they will all do the same thing. So we're going to do it next to the B4, this green one, and we're going to move it to the bottom right. Okay, so that's going to be what? Bottom 0 and right 0. So we already know that right will represent this right hand edge to this right hand wall, and obviously the bottom will be the bottom edge of B4 to the bottom edge of the body. Okay, so let's just do that. So B4 again, we'll do position absolute, and so we said bottom 0 pixels and right 0 pixels. Should also point out it doesn't matter if you do right or left first instead of top or bottom. It makes no difference whatsoever. It is important that you have position absolute, but even that doesn't have to be at the top, although I would recommend that you did do it in order. So again, we save that, and we can see, as we thought, B4 would move down here, and then notice that B5 has moved up in the natural flow and gone below B3 because that was the next space for it to go. So we're going to now move B3 down to the bottom left. And I'm pretty sure you know the code for that, but let's do that anyway. So position absolute. So bottom and 0 pixels, and then left is also 0 pixels. And again, we save that and we view it, and there it is. And again, you can see now we've gone B4, B5, B6 because we've got, oh, that should be B2, so B2, B5, B6 because we've got B1, B3 and B4 here. Okay, and so we've got these ones here, and you can see each time we remove an element by using position absolute, these just sort of move into the void that was left behind. So let's do this again. You can see again that with this B2, it has got this gap around it, like I said, because it's got some default margins applied to it, or maybe it's the body that's got some default padding applied to it, or a combination of both. But either way, we're going to get this B2 in the absolute top left hand corner. I'm sure you can do this already yourself. Feel free to pause the video and try it, but if not, just copy along. So again, it's position absolute, and it is top 0 pixels, and it is left 0 pixels. And we save that, and what we should see is, yeah, now here's the interesting bit as well. Notice that even though that's now in the right place, that the green one, or actually it's the yellow green, which I think is B5, has actually gone in underneath it. Okay, now this is something known as Z indexing in web design. It's the same sort of thing as layers that you might have done in your graphics applications such as Photoshop or GIMP, or Illustrator or Inkscape, whatever programs you might be using. And when we use position absolute, even though they're technically on the same level, the position absolute elements are always slightly above the in the flow element unless we tell it otherwise. And as you can see, that basically position absolute also ignores in the flow things, and in the flow elements ignore the position absolutes. So we've now got an overlap between our absolute position element and our in the flow element. This is something you should be careful of, because obviously if you've got some elements which are still running in the flow, then you may find that you accidentally are hiding some content in your web pages. And so what we're going to do for these last two, we're just going to move them somewhere into the page, okay, just so they're out of the way. So let's go back into our code. So then B1, B2, B3, yeah, B4, so let's do B5, which is position absolute. And let's go top, let's go 300 pixels. And left 300 pixels. Now with our B6, we should do the same. Well, we'll do the same for top, which is 300 pixels, but we'll do right at 300 pixels. And let's not forget we've got to do the position absolute rule, otherwise it won't work. So we save that, and there we have it. Okay, so this is 300 pixels away from the right hand edge and 300 pixels away from the top hand edge. This is 300 pixels away from the top edge and 300 pixels away from the left edge. Now, here's where the position absolute is quite interesting, because when we change the width of our browser, these change their positions too. And again, if you notice, these overlap each other, okay? And notice that it is the burgundy one here which is moving and not the lime green. But if I do this side, it reverses, okay? And you notice it, and again, it works with the height as well, okay? And now, because of the way the position has been done, this is 300 pixels away from the top. If we make this less than 300 pixels, they start to disappear, and we actually have to scroll down to see it. Notice how B3 and B4 stay where they are, because they're within the normal positioning of the body, okay? And the body was given the size of the web page, as it were, of the screen. But these were actually set for being 300 below this top edge. And that's why we get this sort of unusual thing. And again, this is something that sometimes people don't always realise when they're using position absolute, is the effects that can happen when the browser is not the same dimensions as you expected it to be. So rather than me just ranting all the time, what I want you to do is to try a bit on your own, okay? And so to do that, I have a test file for you to do. And as you can see, I'd recommend you call it absolute-test-1.html. And I want you to recreate this. Now, as you can see, I've actually already given you the X, Y, width and height values of these elements. Also, unlike the one we did ourselves together as a group here, where we gave them all the same width and height in the div element, as you can see, we have two which are the same width and height at 100 each, but this one is different. So that will mean that you will need to put the width and height values into the CSS of that element itself. Okay, so what I recommend you do is to pause the video and try this, and then once you've done that, here is your second test, which is this one here. Now, as you'll notice, this is very much more like what you expect from an actual website. There we go. I'll just zoom it out just slightly so you can see it all. And again, this time we've got names, so header, footer, sections, okay, sidebar, and again width, height, X and Y positions. And This is very much like what you see in a real website. So again, please do practice on these. To keep the videos lengths smaller, I will do the solutions to this in the next video. Okay, and so that is it for this video. I hope it's been helpful. Do check the next video for the solutions, and then there will be an additional video to deal with the more complex issue when you have elements inside elements and what happens with position absolute on there. So stay tuned. As always, do you like, subscribe, all that jazz. Don't forget to put comments. I'm not getting enough comments, guys. I don't know what I'm doing right or wrong. Don't know if this audio's good, if it's bad. I do have a new mic coming in 3 weeks, but you know, let me know how it's going. So this is Zen signing off, and speak to you soon.